In the summer of 1999, two young souls disappeared without a trace while exploring the remote wilderness of Olympic National Park. Jordan Riley and Samantha Blake were more than just experienced hikers. They were dreamers chasing the solace and serenity of nature, with their backpacks packed full of maps, supplies, and hope. They left a clear itinerary with friends and family, promised to return within 3 days, but they never came back. For a quarter of a century, their vanishing haunted the memory of those who knew them and the rangers who searched in vain. Then, in 2024, nature stirred the past back to life. A violent storm, the kind that reshapes the forest, ripped through the Pacific Northwest. Among the fallen giants was an ancient cedar, older than memory, its roots gnarled and hollowed by time. Deep inside the rot and decay, a nylon bag was discovered. Inside it, a ruined compass, a cracked emergency whistle, and a water-damaged disposable camera, miraculously intact. When developed, all but one frame were lost to age and water. But the final photo held a revelation so chilling it reopened the case overnight. The image showed Jordan and Samantha at the threshold of a cave, eyes wide with fear. Samantha's hand clutched the camera strap around her neck. Jordan reached instinctively for her. And just behind them, shrouded in the shadowed entrance, a figure loomed, tall, distorted, and wholly unrecognizable. Someone, or something, had been there. August 19th, 1999. The sound of cascading water echoed faintly as Jordan adjusted his pack, trying to mask the doubt blooming in his chest. Rain had turned the trail to mush, and the markers were long gone. He glanced at Samantha, who stood frozen at a fork in the trail. Ferns reached up like fingers reclaiming the forest, and her gaze was locked on something just beyond the trees. "What is it?" he asked, stepping beside her. She didn't turn. Her voice was quiet, but tight. "Did you hear that?" "A whistle." Jordan paused, trying to parse the noise, but all he heard was wind threading through the canopy and the distant crash of water below. They were supposed to loop back to the trailhead that evening. It was their last day. But after lunch near Bogachiel Peak, the terrain had stopped making sense. Still, Jordan clung to their skills, their gear, and a fragile belief in logic. Samantha, however, was shaking. "I feel like we're being watched," she whispered. Jordan scanned the underbrush, forcing calm into his voice. "We've barely seen anyone out here. It's just the isolation messing with us." She didn't buy it. "Number. That's what scares me. We're alone." Jordan stepped close, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We follow the slope downhill. We hit the drainage. Camp by Heart Lake. Tomorrow we hike out." But Samantha's gaze never left the mossy trees. "Jordan, look, the moss is wrong. It's on the south side. We came from the west." Jordan's heart sank. She was right. They'd been circling. Time slipped. Light dimmed. Shadows stretched long. As twilight blurred the forest into a palette of blue and green, they stumbled upon it. The cave. Not on any map. Not marked by trail. Hidden behind curtains of vine maple soaked with rain. The mouth yawned open in utter darkness, unnaturally smooth, as if something ancient had shaped it deliberately. A cold dread pulsed from within. Samantha wanted to leave. Jordan, unusually silent, agreed. But she lifted her camera, its last shot loaded, and with trembling fingers captured the image. The flash flickered weakly, brushing light across stone and shadow. Then they turned and vanished into the woods. August 3rd, 2024. After relentless rains, landslides scarred the park. A maintenance crew near Heart Lake found the fallen cedar, and deep inside its ruined trunk, the nylon bag waited. A memento of a tragedy the forest had long swallowed. Inside that bag, the evidence of a final moment frozen in time. One frame, two terrified faces, one impossible silhouette. August 5th, 2024. Nate Calder cursed as his boots sank in mud, rain drizzling like grief from the sky. "Thought we were just clearing branches," he grumbled. Russell, older and indifferent to discomfort, barely looked back. "Big ones," he replied. The storm had crippled trails, snapped bridges, but this part of the basin felt still, too still. The silence pressed in, heavy. "Trail splits," Russell called. "You take left, I'll sweep the ridge." Nate nodded, heading into ferns that clung like wet fingers. The trail was more myth than path, swallowed by undergrowth. 10 minutes in, he found it. The fallen cedar, massive and split open like a wound in the earth. Its interior was dark, and the rot smelled old. Too old. Drawn by something he couldn't name, Nate stepped closer. In the hollow, a flicker of blue caught his eye. He crouched, reached, and touched the edge of a story waiting to resurface, one sealed in silence for 25 years. But in the forest, some things are hidden for a reason. The fabric came free easily, a faded drawstring bag, the kind handed out at school fairs or summer camps. Water spilled from it as Nate lifted it from the hollow cedar trunk. Inside was a rusted whistle, the kind you'd wear around your neck for emergencies, a broken compass adrift in a cloudy liquid, and a shredded topographic map barely legible from water damage. At the very bottom, wrapped ineffectively in a long failed Ziploc, was a green disposable camera. The Fuji logo just visible, its lens clouded by age and moisture. Nate stood up slowly, heart thumping. This wasn't just litter. It was history, and possibly evidence. That evening, back at the cold case lab in Port Angeles, Detective Elise Grayson stared over the developer tray. As the final image came into focus, something in the room seemed to still. She'd seen hundreds of ruined film rolls over the years, ghosts of lives lost and stories untold. But this one struck different. Most of the film had succumbed to time, mildewed streaks, bloomed chemical rot, memories erased. But the final frame was hauntingly intact. A young couple, their features frozen by the flash. Samantha's hand hovered near Jordan's, her face pulled tight with fear. He looked caught mid-breath, like he just realized something he couldn't unsee. Both were staring directly into the lens. Behind them, half swallowed in shadow, stood a third figure. It was human-like, unnaturally tall, blurred around the edges as if it moved the instant the shutter clicked. A mistake of light, or something else entirely. Grayson didn't speak. Behind her, Detective Nolan let out a low breath. "Jesus? Do we have IDs?" she asked. "Best match is Jordan Riley and Samantha Blake," Nolan replied. "Went missing August 1999, same area." Grayson blinked, the weight of time washing over her. 25 years. They had a detailed plan. 3-day loop hike, 7 Lakes Basin, never came back. Grayson's voice was quiet now. "And this shows up inside a tree." Nolan nodded. "Gear, map, and this camera. Sealed in rot." She lowered the photo and closed her eyes for a moment. "Reopen the file. We're going back in." The following morning, Cynthia Blake opened her door for the first time in months. Silence had become routine. No calls, no vigils, just the echo of hope turning into quiet surrender. But something in the knock had pulled her from the kitchen table, and when she opened the door, the world shifted. 2 detectives stood in rain-damp coats. The woman stepped forward. "Mrs. Blake, I'm Detective Elise Grayson. This is Detective Nolan. We're here about your daughter Samantha." Cynthia clutched the door frame, a wave of memories crashing through her. "We haven't found them," Grayson clarified gently. "But we've recovered something." "May we come in?" She stepped aside, voice caught in her throat. At the table, Grayson slid a photo forward. Cynthia gasped. "Oh my God." "That's her?" Grayson asked softly. "Yes," she whispered. "That's Samantha and Jordan. That's his jacket. She bought that camera before they left. I remember. It was at the gas station. She joked about wanting to document the trip in case we don't come back. Grayson nodded, carefully watching her reaction. We believe this was taken just before they disappeared, found near Heart Lake. Do you recognize the cave? Cynthia stared closer. But look there, behind them. She pointed with a trembling hand to the cave's mouth. There's someone else there. By midweek, back at the ranger station, Grayson and Nolan sat with Kyle Emerson, the last person to log Samantha and Jordan's hiking permit in 1999. Outside, rain tapped steadily on the windows. They were good kids, Kyle said, flipping through a worn logbook. Said they were doing the full loop, due back the 20th. They didn't return, Nolan noted. Kyle nodded solemnly. We searched for days. Dogs, helicopters, nothing. No gear, no tracks, like the mountain swallowed them. Grayson tapped her pen. Ever hear of a cave near that area? Kyle hesitated. Not officially, but locals talk. There's one spot, off trail, beyond the ridge. Old stories. Folks say it doesn't like visitors. Grayson raised an eyebrow. It? The mountain, or whatever's under it? Nolan closed his notebook. Then it's time we went looking. August 11th, 2024. Olympic National Park, Bogachiel Ridge. As they hiked deeper into the forest, the air changed. It wasn't just altitude or terrain. The stillness thickened. Birdsong grew sparse. Wind whispered warnings through the trees. Something unseen was always just beyond reach. Grayson felt it under her skin, the way her breath slowed. Her muscles tensed, her thoughts narrowed. She and Nolan moved carefully, gear secured, footsteps deliberate. Behind them, a ranger named Louise trailed with radio gear and maps. They had permission, clearance, and caution, but no guarantees. This part isn't maintained, Louise muttered. Technically, it's not even mapped. That's why it's promising, Nolan replied. If it's untouched, it might still hold answers. Grayson said nothing. Her eyes kept returning to the trees, towering cedars and hemlocks, trunks wide enough to swallow memory. She imagined Samantha pausing here, raising her camera, unaware it would be her last frame. By late morning, they reached what Louise called Ghost Ridge, a narrow path along the basin's western face. Reports of vanishings had ended here before, vague and unresolved. Grayson stopped. To the left, the brush thinned. Bare roots, disturbed stones, a scar trailing downhill. She followed it with her eyes and saw the jagged black maw of a cave cloaked in moss and fern. She crouched. It was real. They established a perimeter. Nolan marked it on GPS. Louise radioed HQ. Protocol demanded backup before entry. Grayson waited, but her instincts stirred. The stone around the cave's mouth was unnaturally smooth, worn not by time, but by intent. It looked carved. This is it, Nolan said, holding the photo beside the view. It's the same slope. That boulder's a match. Grayson stared at the shadows inside. They stood right here, but what was behind them? Think someone lived here? Nolan asked. I don't know, she said, but whatever frightened them stood right there. They didn't enter until the full team arrived. Dogs, forensics, cave rescue. The area was sealed. No fresh signs of human presence. Only old secrets. At 3:15 p.m., a specialist descended into the dark, equipped with high-angle gear. Minutes later, his voice crackled over the radio. There's another chamber, slopes down, looks like it splits. Wait, there's something here. Grayson's heart leapt. What kind of something? Nolan asked. Cloth, old gear, might be a pack. The fabric came free easily. A faded drawstring bag, the kind handed out at school fairs or summer camps. Water spilled from it as Nate lifted it from the hollow cedar trunk. Inside was a rusted whistle, the kind you'd wear around your neck for emergencies, a broken compass adrift in a cloudy liquid, and a shredded topographic map barely legible from water damage. At the very bottom, wrapped ineffectively in a long-failed Ziploc, was a green disposable camera, the Fuji logo just visible, its lens clouded by age and moisture. Nate stood up slowly, heart thumping. This wasn't just litter. It was history. And possibly evidence. That evening, back at the cold case lab in Port Angeles, Detective Elise Grayson stared over the developer tray. As the final image came into focus, something in the room seemed to still. She'd seen hundreds of ruined film rolls over the years, ghosts of lives lost and stories untold. But this one struck different. Most of the film had succumbed to time, mildewed streaks, bloomed chemical rot, memories erased. But the final frame was hauntingly intact. A young couple, their features frozen by the flash. Samantha's hand hovered near Jordan's, her face pulled tight with fear. He looked caught mid-breath, like he'd just realized something he couldn't unsee. Both were staring directly into the lens. Behind them, half swallowed in shadow, stood a third figure. It was human-like, unnaturally tall, blurred around the edges as if it moved the instant the shutter clicked. A mistake of light? Or something else entirely? Grayson didn't speak. Behind her, Detective Nolan let out a low breath. Jesus. Do we have IDs? She asked. Best match is Jordan Riley and Samantha Blake, Nolan replied. Went missing August 1999, same area. Grayson blinked, the weight of time washing over her. 25 years. They had a detailed plan. 3-day loop hike, 7 Lakes Basin. Never came back. Grayson's voice was quiet now. And this shows up inside a tree? Nolan nodded. Gear, map, and this camera. Sealed in rot. She lowered the photo and closed her eyes for a moment. Reopen the file. We're going back in. The following morning, Cynthia Blake opened her door for the first time in months. Silence had become routine. No calls, no vigils, just the echo of hope turning into quiet surrender. But something in the knock had pulled her from the kitchen table, and when she opened the door, the world shifted. 2 detectives stood in rain-damp coats. The woman stepped forward. Mrs. Blake? I'm Detective Elise Grayson. This is Detective Nolan. We're here about your daughter Samantha. Cynthia clutched the door frame, a wave of memories crashing through her. We haven't found them, Grayson clarified gently, but we've recovered something. May we come in? She stepped. Aside, voice caught in her throat. At the table, Grayson slid a photo forward. Cynthia gasped. Oh my God. That's her? Grayson asked softly. Yes, she whispered. That's Samantha and Jordan. That's his jacket. She bought that camera before they left. I remember it was at the gas station. She joked about wanting to document the trip in case we don't come back. Grayson nodded, carefully watching her reaction. We believe this was taken just before they disappeared. Found near Heart Lake. Do you recognize the cave? Cynthia stared closer. But look there, behind them. She pointed with a trembling hand to the cave's mouth. There's someone else there. By midweek, back at the ranger station, Grayson and Nolan sat with Kyle Emerson, the last person to log Samantha and Jordan's hiking permit in 1999. Outside, rain tapped steadily on the windows. They were good kids, Kyle said, flipping through a worn logbook. Said they were doing the full loop, due back the 20th. They didn't return, Nolan noted. Kyle nodded solemnly. We searched for days. Dogs, helicopters, nothing. No gear, no tracks. Like the mountains swallowed them. Grayson tapped her pen. Ever hear of a cave near that area? Kyle hesitated. Not officially, but locals talk. There's one spot, off-trail beyond the ridge. Old stories. Folks say it doesn't like visitors. Grayson raised an eyebrow. It? The mountain, or whatever's under it. Nolan closed his notebook. Then it's time we went looking. August 11th, 2024. Olympic National Park, Bogachil Ridge. As they hiked deeper into the forest, the air changed. It wasn't just altitude or terrain. The stillness thickened. Birdsong grew sparse. Wind whispered warnings through the trees. Something unseen was always just beyond reach. Grayson felt it under her skin, the way her breath slowed. Her muscles tensed. Her thoughts narrowed. She and Nolan moved carefully, gear secured, footsteps deliberate. Behind them, a ranger named Louise trailed with radio gear and maps. They had permission, clearance, and caution, but no guarantees. "This part isn't maintained," Louise muttered. "Technically, it's not even mapped." "That's why it's promising," Nolan replied. "If it's untouched, it might still hold answers." Grayson said nothing. Her eyes kept returning to the trees, towering cedars and hemlocks, trunks wide enough to swallow memory. She imagined Samantha pausing here, raising her camera, unaware it would be her last frame. By late morning, they reached what Louise called Ghost Ridge, a narrow path along the basin's western face. Reports of vanishings had ended here before, vague and unresolved. Grayson stopped. To the left, the brush thinned. Bare roots, disturbed stones, a scar trailing downhill. She followed it with her eyes and saw the jagged black maw of a cave, cloaked in moss and fern. She crouched. It was real. They established a perimeter. Nolan marked it on GPS. Louise radioed HQ. Protocol demanded backup before entry. Grayson waited, but her instinct stirred. The stone around the cave's mouth was unnaturally smooth, worn not by time, but by intent. It looked carved. "This is it," Nolan said, holding the photo beside the view. "It's the same slope. That boulder's a match." Grayson stared at the shadows inside. They stood right here, but what was behind them? "Think someone lived here?" Nolan asked. "I don't know," she said. But whatever frightened them stood right there. They didn't enter until the full team arrived. Dogs, forensics, cave rescue. The area was sealed. No fresh signs of human presence. Only old secrets. At 3:15 p.m., a specialist descended into the dark, equipped with high-angle gear. Minutes later, his voice crackled over the radio. "There's another chamber. Slopes down. Looks like it splits. Wait, there's something here." Grayson's heart leapt. "What kind of something?" Nolan asked. "Cloth. Old gear. Might be a pack. It looks buried in silt. Maybe from a flood," the voice added. 15 minutes later, they hoisted the first bag up through the harness. It was mud-covered, crushed, but intact. A faded blue pack, the same model Cynthia Blake remembered. Inside were 2 waterlogged notebooks, a film canister, and a cracked plastic ID card. Jordan Riley, DOB, April 22nd, 1972. Grayson stared at the card, heart pounding. They had found him, or what he'd left behind. That evening, in the evidence room, the items lay drying. Most of the notebook pages were ruined. Ink bled into waterlogged paper, but some had resisted, thanks to deep, deliberate pen pressure. Grayson read one page slowly, the letters faint but recoverable. "We circled back. This isn't the way we came. Sam thinks something's tracking us. I didn't want to believe her, but last night I saw it too. It doesn't move like a person. It watches like an animal. But it's taller, and I don't think it blinks." Grayson traced the indented words with her finger. "It," she whispered. "There's more," Nolan said, revealing the next page. The top corner had torn away, but part of a message remained. "If we don't make it out, someone needs to know what we found. It goes deeper. It breathes. There's another way in." Grayson sat back, her pulse spiking. Another way in. 2 days later, at the Seattle Forensic Lab, technicians developed the film from Jordan's pack. Most rolls were ruined, but one had been sealed in heat-shrunk plastic. Among the intact frames was another image of the cave. This one had been taken from the inside, looking out. Samantha stood backlit at the entrance, arms raised, maybe in warning. Behind her something moved, just enough blur to suggest motion, just enough light to reflect a shape. long-limbed, pale. "That's not a person," Grayson whispered. Nolan didn't argue. August 13th. Cynthia Blake sat silently, staring at the photo. Her daughter looked back through time, lips parted, eyes wide, fear now unmistakable after forensic enhancement. Cynthia finally reached out. "She looks older," she said. "Not in years, just tired." Grayson nodded. "We found Jordan's backpack in a chamber past the entrance. That's how we got the second roll." "Did you find anything else?" Cynthia asked, hope and dread braided in her voice. "No bodies, no remains. But we did find part of his journal." Grayson explained what Jordan wrote. About being tracked, something inhuman, another way in. Cynthia crossed the room and opened a cedar chest, pulling out a shoebox. "My husband didn't want to keep any of it, but I did." Inside were old photos, a folded map, and hand-sketched notes. Grayson's breath caught. The map was detailed, unlike anything officially charted. One part, far-off trail, circled in red. "Samantha drew this," Cynthia said. "She believed the mountain held secrets. She wanted to find something forgotten." Back at the park, search teams combed the circled area. No footprints, no remains. But on day 3, high above the ridge, cadaver dogs stopped. Beneath a collapsed embankment, they uncovered a metal hatch, rusted, partially buried. No hinges, a single ring handle, and remnants of caution tape. Grayson crouched beside it. "This isn't natural." Nolan eyed the structure. "Old mine? Or something sealed on purpose?" Forensic excavation arrived. After hours of careful digging, the hatch came clear. 4 feet wide, reinforced steel, yellow paint flaking off the edges. Etched into the rim, property of U.S. Interior, field research access only. Nolan whispered, "You think they found this?" Grayson looked from the hatch to the map. "They found something they weren't supposed to." That night, the lab techs enhanced the second cave photo. From inside, behind Samantha's silhouette, new detail emerged. A symbol scrawled onto the stone wall. A circle with 3 downward lines, like legs, or a warning. "Graffiti?" Grayson asked. The tech shook his head. Number burned in, not pigment. Heat. Grayson stared at it, unsettled. It didn't look like a message. It looked like a mark, a boundary. 2 days later, with heavy gear in place, the hatch was opened. Steel groaned. Air rushed up, thick with rot and old stone. A rusted ladder led into darkness. Nolan turned to her. "You going in?" Grayson buckled her helmet, flicked on her light. "I'm not letting this stay buried." She descended first. Below was no cave. It was a structure. Stone walls, reinforced corridors, a facility, forgotten by time, remembered by fear. The fabric came free easily. A faded drawstring bag, the kind handed out at school fairs or summer camps. Water spilled from it as Nate lifted it from the hollow cedar trunk. Inside was a rusted whistle, the kind you'd wear around your neck for emergencies, a broken compass adrift in a cloudy liquid, and a shredded topographic map barely legible from water damage. At the very bottom, wrapped ineffectively in a long-failed ziplock, was a green disposable camera, the Fuji logo just visible, its lens clouded by age and moisture. Nate stood up slowly, heart thumping. This wasn't just litter. It was history, and possibly evidence. It was a facility long abandoned, judging by the water stains, collapsed beams, and mold-ridden walls. But scattered remnants of human activity remained. Metal desks bolted to the floor, filing cabinets warped shut by humidity, and signage rusted beyond recognition. Except for one, Section 4, Psi B, Environmental Anomaly. Survey. Nolan swept his light along a nearby wall. His beam caught on something carved deep into the stone. It was the symbol again, circle, 3 legs, etched in brutal, jagged lines. But this time, it had company. A word scrawled beside it, as though scratched in desperation. "It watches." Grayson didn't speak. Her breath caught. She could hear it too now, faint movement in the corridor ahead. Something dragging, something breathing. They weren't alone. August 16th, 2024. Deep within Section 4B, Grayson's helmet light flickered, then steadied. She stepped forward, her voice hushed. "Nolan, do you hear that?" He nodded slowly. It wasn't just the echo of their own steps. It was ahead of them. Something soft, shuffling, deliberately staying out of sight. A scrape, then silence, like it was waiting. "Could be an animal," Nolan muttered, though his tone betrayed his doubt. As they crossed into the next chamber, the air dropped in temperature. The walls here were painted an institutional green-gray, and the far end had partially collapsed, but a rusted cot stood untouched. A desk beside it bore another sign: Observation Room, Protocol, Level 3. Grayson approached, wiping dust from the clipboard atop the desk. She tilted it toward her light. Log entries, dates, initials, times. She flipped to the final page. August 20th, 1999. The day Samantha and Jordan vanished. The entry read, "Internal lockdown, echo trigger. No clearance for exit, unmapped opening identified." Grayson looked up, eyes meeting Nolan's. They knew. Someone in this facility knew there was another cave mouth, and they shut it down. Whether to keep people in or something out remained unclear. That night, the surface hatch was sealed. Grayson didn't sleep. She sat in her parked car, headlights off, staring into the swaying treetops. The symbol burned behind her eyes. The phrase, "It watches," looped through her thoughts. Preliminary samples collected from the facility showed disturbing anomalies: high iron and sulfur content, elevated heat signatures from deeper strata, either geothermal vents or something else, something unnatural, was still emitting energy below. The place wasn't dead, and that unsettled her more than anything she'd seen above ground. 2 days later, Dr. Helen Curthers, a retired park geologist, arrived at the site. She'd spent 20 years mapping fault lines in the region before retiring in 2003 under murky circumstances. Grayson met her at the ranger cabin, handing her the cave photo. Helen studied it for nearly a full minute. "You found it," she said at last. "You've seen this cave?" Grayson asked. "In '98, I was flown in for a landslide analysis, but it wasn't that. There were contractors already down there. Military types, no names, just number patches." "What were they looking for?" "Not what," Helen said. "Where?" She paused, then continued. "They were mapping acoustic anomalies, echoes that didn't match geology. Some came back inverted, like something was bouncing sound back with intent, like something was listening." "You're saying the mountain was responding?" Grayson whispered. "I'm saying they sealed it for a reason. I left after 3 days, refused the hazard pay." Grayson exhaled. "We think 2 hikers stumbled onto this in '99, Samantha Blake and Jordan Riley." Helen didn't blink. "Then they're still down there." That evening, after the camp quieted, Grayson reread Jordan's notebook. The last entry, smudged but deliberate. "We tried the surface. We tried screaming. But it hers us first. The only way out is forward." She stood up. Outside, wind stilled. The forest hushed. She picked up her flashlight and returned to the hatch. The ladder groaned under her weight. At the bottom, her light caught the familiar path, but this time, she searched the ground, scratches, marks, trails. She found them just beyond the observation room. Drag marks, human-sized. And beside them, smeared bare footprints. Small, Samantha's. She had been stumbling or pulled. On the far wall, in red charcoal, the final message: "Don't look back." Grayson stepped backward, but she didn't turn. She listened. Nothing. No scrape. No breath. Only silence. August 18th, 2024. Grayson returned with another flashlight, a voice recorder, and Samantha's hiking permit clipped to her vest. Not for protocol, but for something else. Memory. Intent. At the trailer, Nolan handed her a backup radio. "Check in every 10 minutes. If you lose signal, you come back. No hero moves." She nodded. "Copy that." Alone, she descended. The corridor had changed. Moisture clung to the air. Droplets shimmered on the ceiling. But the walls were dry. Too dry. The deeper she went, the more the clean-cut architecture dissolved into irregular curves. Like the stone had reshaped itself. She passed the "Don't Look Back" warning and stepped beyond it. Her light dimmed slightly as the space narrowed, walls pressing inward. Then suddenly, it opened. A vast dome, 50 feet across. The ceiling arched like a cathedral, black with soot. At the center stood a solitary structure, a metal chair bolted to a platform, surrounded by coiled wires and a broken screen hanging above it. She moved forward. A plaque beside the chair read, half obscured by grime, ECHOSUBJECTSTATIONONEAUDIOFEEDBACKISOLATION. Grayson turned on her recorder. "This is Detective Elise Grayson. I've reached a chamber past Section 4B. Architecture appears artificial and unrecorded. One chair, mounted, wired. Monitoring station, possibly. Purpose unclear." The fabric came free easily. A faded drawstring bag, the kind handed out at school fairs or summer camps. Water spilled from it as Nate lifted it from the hollow cedar trunk. Inside was a rusted whistle, the kind you'd wear around your neck for emergencies, a broken compass adrift in a cloudy liquid, and a shredded topographic map barely legible from water damage. At the very bottom, wrapped ineffectively in a long failed ziplock, was a green disposable camera, the Fuji logo just visible, its lens clouded by age and moisture. Nate stood up slowly, heart thumping. This wasn't just litter. It was history, and possibly evidence. Grayson turned slowly in the dome chamber, her beam cutting through still air and clinging dust. No exits, no signage, just concrete and soot, and the echo of something long since abandoned. Her light flicked past what she thought was a dark corner, then bounced off something glassy. She turned. A mirror, or what remained of one. Mounted behind the chair platform, its surface was fractured and fogged, but in the center a clean split had formed like a wound. And carved directly into the glass, in crude etched letters, "You hear it too." Not a question, a message, left by someone else who had sat in that chair, someone who had heard what she now feared was still lurking in the dark. Back on the surface, Nolan paced the command tent. The clock ticked past 10 minutes. Then 15. No signal, no check-in. He keyed his radio. "Grayson, this is Nolan. Do you copy?" Only static. He turned to Louise. "When was her last ping?" Louise checked the console. 13 minutes. Signal was stable. Nolan's jaws set. "Suit up, we're going in." But Grayson wasn't lost. She was still in the dome, crouched beside the grated platform. Her light had caught something beneath it. Folded fabric, red fleece, mold-streaked but intact. A jacket, Samantha's size. Inside its pocket, an undeveloped film roll, unlabeled, miraculously dry. She froze. Next to it, behind the base of the chair, was a necklace, a plastic butterfly charm split down the middle. Cynthia had described it. Samantha wore it on every hike. Grayson backed away, breath shallow. This wasn't a shelter. It was a threshold. Samantha had been here, and she hadn't gone willingly. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Relief flickered, then died. Too quick, too light, too many. She killed her light. Silence. Then a soft scrape, rhythmic, deliberate, skin against stone. She pressed against the wall, heart pounding. A shadow crossed the edge of her vision. Then another. Not human, not walking, not breathing. Whatever lived here, it never left. She reached for her radio, but before she could press the button, a voice whispered, "Clear, close, close." She spun, light flicking on. No one there. August 18th, 2024. Later that evening. Nolan's boot struck the concrete hard as he descended into the shaft, Luis close behind. Their lights cut long beams through the dark, reaching, searching, no ping, no word. They reached the "Don't look back" warning. Luis paused. Did she say anything about this? Nolan didn't answer, because up ahead, the air changed. It tasted like metal and breath, wet copper, old lungs, then the dome, and there, beneath the platform, Grayson crouched, necklace in hand. "She was here," she whispered. "Samantha made it this far." Nolan knelt beside her. "Then where is she now?" Grayson looked at the chair, at the strap still bolted to the arms. This wasn't research. It was a test. On sound, on minds. Did she leave anything else? Grayson held up the roll of film. Unlabeled. Might be the last thing she ever saw. Luis lingered at the edge of the dome, unease on his face. "There's something wrong with this place," he murmured. "Like it's listening." Grayson turned. "What did you say?" "I said—" "No, the word. Listening." Luis frowned. "Yeah, why?" Grayson pulled Jordan's notebook from her vest, open to a familiar line. "The echoes don't come back right. They're not bouncing. They're absorbed, like it hears us." She looked at the mirror behind the chair, then at the walls. "This dome, it doesn't amplify sound. It attracts attention." Luis stepped back. "From what?" The answer came in scraping, subtle, deliberate. They didn't speak, didn't run, just listened. Felt it shift just beyond sight. Grayson whispered, "We leave." Nolan nodded. "No questions." They moved together, lights off, radios dead, backs to the wall. Step by step. The hatch appeared like salvation. Luis scrambled up first, calling for unlock. Nolan followed. Grayson climbed last, butterfly charm clenched tight. By 3 a.m., the hatch was resealed. Reinforced, but inside the Ranger trailer, peace never came. The film roll sat in a sealed bag. Grayson's fingers hovered near it like it might bite. "You sure you want to develop it here?" Nolan asked. "We can't wait. If Samantha documented anything, we need to see it." Under red light, they worked. One image, then another. Most were darkness. Then Samantha, her own hand holding the camera. Then something else, blurry, pale limbs. Reaching. Nolan whispered, "That's not Jordan." Then the final frame, a stone door, bolted shut. On the floor in front, Samantha's red jacket and her boots, placed side by side. On the door, scrawled in jagged letters, "I went in to make it stop." Grayson's voice cracked. "She went deeper." Nolan didn't respond. He didn't have to, because whatever was still waiting beyond that door, it had waited 25 years. August 19th, 2024, Seattle, Washington. Grayson didn't sleep. She sat in the forensic van as dawn broke, the sound silent beyond the glass. The photos haunted her, the symmetry, the silence, the scrawled plea. At the lab, the tech met them at the door. "We digitized the roll, but there's more." He led them to a monitor, tapped the final image. "When we ran an infrared scan, we found something below the emulsion, almost like a second layer." He adjusted the display. The same photo, but now, beneath the door, faint lines emerged. Letters, a hidden message. "If you follow, kill the lights." Grayson froze. Not a warning, a command. By late afternoon, back at the park, Luis had reinforced the entrance with motion sensors. More Rangers stood watch. The media hadn't arrived, yet. Grayson looked at Nolan. "We go in tonight." "You serious? If that door still exists, if Samantha went beyond it, we follow." And the message? Grayson held up a blackout headlamp. We're prepared. At 9 p.m., beneath a sky sealed with stars, they descended again. No fanfare, no signal sent. Only silence. And something waiting beyond the final frame. Just the three of them, Grayson, Nolan, and Luis. Returned underground, each carrying field kits, muted radios, and blackout gear. The dome chamber felt colder now. Not just in temperature, but in presence. As if it had been waiting. They passed the chair, the fractured mirror, and rusted wiring, their boots silent on the concrete floor, until they reached it. The door from Samantha's photograph. It was real. Towering, steel reinforced. Built like a vault, embedded directly into the rock. Grayson's breath caught in her throat. There, just to the side, were Samantha's red fleece jacket and boots. Still there, untouched. She knelt beside them. The jacket had hardened with age, but was otherwise intact. Grayson checked the inner pocket. Empty. Then she noticed the scratches, marks carved into the stone beside the door. Small, frantic, etched by something sharp, a knife or a rock. A message. Stay in the dark. Luis whispered, That can't be literal. Grayson shook her head. What if it is? They killed their headlamps, relying on the dim ambient glow of their chem lights. Nolan examined the doorframe. No visible lock. Looks like it opens inward. Grayson placed both palms on the door and pushed. Metal groaned. Slowly, it gave. The seal broke with a heavy exhale of warm, stagnant air. They stepped into a narrow stone corridor, walls smoothed unnaturally by tools or machines long vanished. Metal ribs braced the passage in rusting lines. The ceiling dipped low. The scent changed, damp, like earth and iron, like something old, long buried. They walked 5 minutes in silence, then movement. Up ahead, a figure, limping, thin, human. It turned. Grayson's light caught. A familiar face. Samantha. Alive. Her hair hung in tangled strands. Her clothes were torn, stained. She raised one trembling finger to her lips. Shh. Then she pointed not forward, but down. Grayson's light swept the floor. A narrow shaft lay at their feet, possibly a service crawlway. Luis whispered, She's trying to tell us something. Grayson read her lips. Don't look. Don't speak. Don't light. Then Samantha vanished into the dark. Grayson lowered herself into the shaft first. Boots braced against the wall, back pressed to the stone. The air was hot, moist, pulsing with unseen breath. The metal rungs had long corroded into jagged hooks. Luis remained above, rifle at the ready. Nolan followed her down. At the bottom, the crawl space opened into a small ante-chamber. Grayson swept her chemlight around and froze. The walls were covered, top to bottom, carvings, messages, scrawled in rust, charcoal, blood. Don't say its name. It crawls beneath the breath. It listens through your bones. One read, We heard the hissing before the wall opened. Overlapping scripts, chaotic layers. But one message was clear, sharp, and heartbreakingly familiar. Jordan never made it past the dome. I kept walking. I shouldn't have. Samantha's handwriting. Nolan spotted a pack wedged into the wall crevice. Inside, an old analog recorder. Grayson nodded. Batteries? Nolan handed them over. She inserted them. Pressed play. A woman's voice. Trembling. Weak. August 22nd, maybe. No daylight, no clocks. I went past the platform, down where the air got warm. I saw the chair. I saw it move, but Jordan wasn't in it. I thought I saw him. I followed, and it wasn't him. I think it wears your voice. That's how it learns. That's how it knows when you're alone. Grayson's hands shook. This thing didn't just echo sound. It became it. Back at the surface, local news had picked up drone footage of ranger teams near the ridge. Message boards exploded with theories. But what none of them knew yet was that 3 people had already gone far beyond the point of rescue. And what they were about to find would rewrite everything. Beyond the chamber, the tunnel veered sharply. And there it was, a cavern, impossible in size, shaped like a bowl, wider than a football field. The ceiling arched like a cathedral, its frame fractured by rusted rebar and collapsed pipes. At the far end, another chair. Larger, industrial, caged, now broken open. Around it, a ring of drag marks, dozens, hundreds, fingernails. Grayson whispered, "A trap! Or maybe a stage." Nolan found another disposable camera buried beneath a collapsed grate, same make as Samantha's, intact. Next to it, a boot, torn. Faded marker inside the insole. SB right. "She dropped it on purpose," Grayson said. "She's leaving us a trail." Then, snap, behind them. Dust swirled. Air shifted. Luis's voice crackled through the radio. Something moved in the shaft. It's tall, pale, no face. "Standing still, not breathing. Grayson, kill your light." Luis obeyed. But the static didn't end. It changed. Breathing, then a voice. "You're close! You're close! You're close!" Not the radio, the chair. Grayson stood frozen. The voice kept cycling. Louder, closer, "You're close." Then, "He's still here." Then silence. Click. The recorder in Grayson's bag switched back on. No one had touched it. A new voice. Male. Raspy. Inhuman. Didn't mean to let her go, but she opened the door. Grayson's blood ran cold. It wasn't Jordan. It wasn't human. By the time they climbed back to the shaft, Luis was pale, his grip iron around his rifle. "There's something walking the corridor," he whispered. "It doesn't make sound unless it wants to." Back in the dome, frost laced the walls. Impossible with geothermal heat below. Grayson to Luis. "Hold the line." No one in. No one. He nodded. Silent. Grayson and Nolan ascended. At the Seattle field office, the photos were laid out. 12. 10 of the cave, 1 of the corridors, 1 of the door. But Samantha had carried 2 cameras. 1 roll was missing. Grayson studied the door photo, tilted her head. "It wasn't taken walking in," she said. "It was taken walking out." They recovered Samantha's final journal, previously discarded as trauma-induced rambling. One line chilled Grayson. "I saw Jordan again." Or what was left of him. He was inside the wall. The chair's a lure. It listens until you sit, then it calls them. I keep hearing my voice in the dark. If I leave, I bring it with me. So I stay. Not for me. For anyone who comes looking. At sunrise, Grayson returned alone. Luis's post was abandoned, his radio on the ground. Drag marks led inward. Inside the dome, emptiness. Not silence, not noise. Emptiness. The mirror was gone, shattered into 1,000 outward-pointing shards. Grayson stood in the center. "Samantha," she whispered, "I'm here." No reply. The light flickered. The mirror fragments pulsed. Just once. Grayson reached into her pocket. The butterfly charm. Still whole. She placed the butterfly charm gently on the chair and waited. August 21st, 2024. Location, Dome Chamber, Sub-Level Access, Olympic National Park. Grayson didn't sleep. She remained in the chair for hours, unrestrained, still, alert. She imagined how Samantha must have sat here 25 years ago, staring into the dark, listening for the voice that echoed no sound. The chamber around her pulsed with silence. Even her own breathing seemed swallowed by the air. Time stopped obeying its rules. Then something shifted. Not a flicker, not a sound, but the light, soft and steady, changed hue, as though the air itself had drawn a breath. The silence deepened. Then, wet footsteps, slow, measured, familiar. From the corridor, a silhouette emerged. Not rushed, not timid, certain. It stepped to within 30 feet. A figure, Tall, spindly, with joints too thin, skin stretched taut over wrong bones. Grayson didn't move. Her chem light stayed low. The air was dense now, like the inside of a diver's mask, thick with pressure. Then it spoke. "You found the necklace." Samantha's voice, but the shape was wrong. Hollow eyes, limp arms, a face remembered but disassembled. "You shouldn't have come alone." Grayson said nothing. Instead, she slowly pulled the recovered film roll from her jacket. "She left this," Grayson whispered. "I think she wanted someone to finish what she couldn't." The figure moved, 3 feet from the dome's edge. "She went too deep," it hissed. "Stayed too long, left something open." Then, gone. No retreat, no flash, just nothing. An hour later, Nolan's voice buzzed faintly over the radio. He was hiking in alone. Reinforcements had been denied. Federal red tape. Grayson answered calmly, "Don't enter yet." "I know where she went." 10 minutes later, Grayson descended alone into the crawl shaft. The air had changed. Still warm, but unnervingly still. She returned to the massive B-shaped chamber. The second chair loomed, its containment frame rusted and wide open. But the boot she had tagged earlier? Gone. So was the camera. Only a light remained, glowing faintly behind the rubble wall. Grayson followed. Beyond the breach lay a passage older than the others, with overhead wires like tangled veins. Symbols lined the stone, not carved by hand, but etched by something else. Not human. She entered a small alcove lit from within. At its center sat a wooden crate, rotting at the seams. Inside, a realtor's tape recorder, dead batteries, warped tape, but taped inside the lid, a photo, water-damaged, folded, still visible. Samantha, standing before the second chair, finger to lips. Timestamp, September 2nd, 1999. She had survived. Weeks after vanishing. Grayson stared at the image. Behind Samantha, just visible in the darkness. Something stood, pale, eyeless, watching. She returned to the dome just before sunrise. The mirror was back. Same frame, same wall. No one had brought it in. Grayson approached. Her reflection blinked back, tired, dust-covered, hollow-eyed. Then another figure stepped into the mirror behind her. She spun. Nothing. She turned again. Her reflection smiled. She did not. August 22nd, 2024. Location: Command Trailer, Olympic National Park. Grayson emerged at dawn, boots coated in red dust, eyes bloodshot. She stepped inside, wordless, and set the photo of Samantha on Nolan's desk. "She survived," Grayson said. Nolan leaned forward. "That's her." Grayson nodded. 2 weeks after vanishing, timestamp confirms it. Nolan studied the photo. Behind Samantha, a shape. "You think that's what killed her?" Grayson hesitated. I think that's what she tried to contain." They mapped the timeline. August 14th, 1999. Samantha and Jordan entered the park. August 16th, reported missing. August 22nd. Samantha's journal said Jordan died in the dome. September 2nd, the photo. Then, silence. Until a ranger recovered Luis's abandoned pack. Inside, another disposable camera, unused. Beneath it, a torn notebook page. "Don't bring light. It feeds on attention. It mirrors. It remembers your sound. If you hear it in your own voice, you've already let it in." Grayson froze. 12 hours earlier, every whisper in the dome had sounded like her. That night, Nolan reviewed the tape from the crate. Channel A, destroyed. Channel B, faint audio. A child's voice. "Mom, it's cold down here." Then static. Then, "I thought I was going to heaven, but I went the wrong way." Grayson stiffened. Not Samantha's voice, a mimic. Back underground, the mirror was gone again. In its place, charred stone. No frame, no glass, just ash. A shadow burned into the wall, a seated woman. Faceless, etched in soot. Grayson stepped forward. Her chem light revealed scrawled text around the outline. I held it back as long as I could, but it's listening through you now. On the ridge, Nolan received a call. Federal agents en route. Level 4 containment. He turned to tell Grayson. She was gone. Inside, the chair wasn't empty. A figure sat motionless, head bowed. Long hair, torn clothing, eyes wide, frozen in one direction. Samantha. No breath. Grayson stepped forward, took her hand, then the chair vibrated. No speaker, no machinery. Just a voice through stone. Another voice to carry me further. Grayson stepped back. Darkness fell. August 23rd, 2024. The darkness inside the dome wasn't absence, it was presence, breathing beside her. Then, "Elise," the voice said. Her voice, the way she used to answer her father's calls. "Don't leave me down here." Grayson clenched her teeth. "You're not me," the voice replied. "But I was Samantha. I was Jordan. I was Luis. Every voice I touch, I remember." "Then remember this," Grayson whispered. She pulled out the butterfly charm and the second undeveloped film roll from Luis's pack. She crushed it. The scream that followed wasn't sound. It was inside her. Above ground, 6 federal agents reached the dome. Nolan blocked the hatch. "She's still in there," the lead agent. "Then she's already gone. Seal it." Inside, the chair sat empty. But the mirror had returned. Grayson stepped forward, into it. What followed wasn't real. A forest, laughter, a red jacket on a stump. Then, the chair again, strapped in, dome humming. Jordan beside her whispering, "Don't look up." Then, silence. Then, breath. Grayson gasped. She was on the surface, collapsed just outside. Agents scrambled, but by the tree line, a woman stood, red jacket intact. Samantha. She raised a finger to her lips, then vanished. No footprints. Only a whisper. "Tell them I stayed." September 2nd, 2024. FBI Field Office, Seattle. The dome was sealed, records buried, the chair removed. Luis never found. But when they scanned the broken film Grayson had crushed, one frame had survived. Samantha in front of the mirror. Behind her, a dozen shadows. All her, all whispering. If you open it, it becomes you. The file was classified, but Grayson remembered every word. And sometimes, in silence, she still whispered back. October 18th, 2024. Kent, Washington. A storage locker. Key hidden inside Cynthia Blake's copy of The Outsiders. Locker 44B. Inside, a steel case. A note. If you're reading this, you saw it too. I'm sorry. I never meant to be found. But if you did, you deserve to know what came next. SB inside. A third disposable camera, unused. A cassette tape labeled "Do Not Listen in the Dark." A mirror shard wrapped in cloth. Grayson stared at her reflection. Not haunted, not possessed, just tired. Then the reflection blinked before she did.